Why did the night at Fort Bragg feel so heavy, as if the air itself carried a warning no one else could hear? Moonlight stretched across the parade ground, throwing long shadows against the flagpole. 6 men moved with quiet cruelty, dragging a single struggling woman toward the center. Her wrists bled where restraints cut too tight, yet she didn't cry out. She didn't plead. The silence was worse than resistance. They were special forces operators, America's elite, but tonight they weren't warriors. They were boys in a schoolyard with power, and they wanted someone to break. Their leader leaned close, his whisper dripping arrogance. "Time to learn your place, sweetheart. Women don't belong in our world." The rope went around her torso. Tight, tactical knots, clean and professional, prisoner knots. The kind meant to hold under torture, the kind meant to leave scars. They pulled harder than necessary, testing her, smirking at her stillness. She didn't speak. Her head tilted back, eyes on the American flag limp in the night air. Something shifted in her body, subtle like the quiet drawing of a bowstring. Veins stood out on her forearms. The rope creaked. Laughter faltered. Then snap. A single fiber gave way, then another, like distant rifle shots echoing across the parade ground. One muttered. The ropes broke in an explosion of fibers. She was free before they even realized the shift in momentum. A shadow in motion, sudden and precise. One strike to the throat, silence. Another blow to the knee, collapse. They reached for weapons they didn't carry. Their arrogance had assumed victory. Their mistake had assumed weakness. They never stood a chance. 15 years later, dawn rolled over Montana's Eagle Valley. Golden light spilled across wheat fields, mountains looming like sentinels beyond. To the casual eye, it was a postcard: farms, fences, quiet tractors, children biking down dirt roads. No one passing through would guess the valley's secret. No one would suspect how close it sat to America's arsenal. 30 miles north, Malmstrom Air Force Base held a wing of nuclear missiles. The placement wasn't coincidence. Strategic positioning, silent defense. Those who understood knew. Catherine Morgan knew. She was 39 now. To neighbors, she was a farmer who had bought 200 acres of soil with cash and stubborn purpose. Bluebird Farm, they called it, a nice spread on the valley's edge. Her auburn hair was tied in a no-nonsense ponytail. Her frame was athletic, hardened but unassuming, and her eyes piercing blue, scanning, never missing. The valley folk accepted her in their slow, cautious way. She played her role well. When asked, she gave the same answer. Corporate security consulting back east, burned out, wanted peace. The kind of vague truth that discouraged curiosity. But her mornings told a different story. At 4:30 a.m., before chores, she ran 10 kilometers along her fences. She followed with 90 minutes of strength drills, combat repetitions, marksmanship practice in a reinforced basement hidden beneath her barn. That basement required a 16-digit code and biometric clearance to open. Hardly the habit of a tired consultant. Sheriff Mike Callahan noticed more than most. He was 65, a Marine from Vietnam, sharp-eyed, careful. Once he saw her catch a falling whiskey glass midair in the Rusty Nail Tavern without glancing at it. Just reflex. Reflex you don't forget after combat. Reflex that doesn't fade. "Remarkable reflexes you've got there, Miss Morgan," he said. She smiled politely. "Just lucky, I guess." He didn't press. He recognized the compartmentalization of a soldier. She wasn't causing trouble. That was good enough, until the Pentagon announcement. News spread like fire through dry brush. The Department of Defense had acquired land next to Eagle Valley. They would build an advanced training facility. Next-generation defensive capabilities, they called it. Construction would begin in 60 days. The town hall filled with chatter, suspicion, fear. Catherine sat in the back row, her face calm, her knuckles white against the chair's edge. She watched the officers at the front. She said nothing, but something inside her shifted again, the same subtle bowstring tension that had snapped ropes years ago. Later that night she drove home, headlights cutting through country dark. At her turnoff, a black SUV waited. Government plates. She didn't slow. She drove past as though blind. A mile further, she killed her lights, pulled onto a dirt track, and circled back on foot. In the trees, she crouched and watched two men examine her gait. Not bureaucrats, not surveyors. The way they moved told her everything. Predators, military-trained, communicating in silent hand signals, scanning the dark like wolves. She melted back into the woods, circled wide, entered her property through a hidden path. Once inside, she locked down her systems. Surveillance online, perimeter secured, laptop awake. Time to find out who had found her. 3 days later, the military rolled into town openly. 3 Humvees, a black Suburban with Pentagon flags, 4 officers, a dozen soldiers. The Rusty Nail Tavern buzzed. Everyone had a theory. Catherine sat alone at the bar, whiskey in hand, listening. Then the door opened. Silence fell. A tall man, late 60s, silver hair, civilian clothes too fine for this town, but his bearing was unmistakable. Command. She didn't turn, but the mirror behind the bar gave her his face. Recognition hit like cold steel. Colonel James Iron Jim Harrington, Delta Force legend. The man who had recruited her 15 years ago. The man who was supposed to be dead. He scanned the room with practiced ease. His gaze paused on her back a fraction too long. Then he moved on, charming locals with bourbon and practiced warmth. She left first, cash on the counter, walking to her truck. The air was sharp, stars bright overhead. She sensed him before she heard him. "Beautiful night," Harrington said behind her. "Stars seem brighter here than back east." She turned slowly. "Can I help you with something?" "I think perhaps we might help each other, Miss Morgan." His voice wrapped around her name like a test. "Or do you prefer your previous professional name?" Her face was steady. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Is there somewhere we might speak privately?" His tone was calm, deliberate. "If I meant you harm, I wouldn't have approached in public." She studied him, the man she had once trusted, the man reported dead in Kandahar. Ruthless, yes, but never without honor. If he had survived, why hide? Why return now? Finally she said, "Follow me. A quarter mile back, no calls, no tail, or I disappear." He nodded. At her kitchen table, they sat across from each other, coffee untouched. "You're looking well for a dead man," she said. "Likewise, Captain Hayes," he answered. "Or is it Major now? I lost track after the incident." "It's just Cade. We both know there's nothing simple about you, Cynthia." The name, her real name, cut deeper than his presence. "Why are you here?" she asked. "Because the official story is a lie. Kandahar didn't kill me. It made me invisible. I've been running black projects since." His voice hardened. "Do you know about Project Athena?" Her pulse spiked, though she didn't show it. Athena, the program that had made her, broken her. The program of women trained for missions men couldn't reach, disbanded after Kandahar. "It was shut down," she said evenly. "That's the story. The truth, it's coming back, with upgrades, and Eagle Valley will be its headquarters." She leaned back cautious. "Why here?" "Because someone knows you're here." His eyes locked on hers. "And Greystone knows too." The name froze her blood. Greystone Strategic Services. Marcus Drake. The man who had once tied her to a flagpole, who had lost everything because she didn't break. "He's dead," she said flatly. "Are you sure?" Harrington slid a flash drive across the table. "Everything I have. If Drake's alive, he's moving pieces here. And if that's true, we're both in danger." Kate didn't touch the drive. "Why should I trust you?" "Because I lost 7 good women in Kandahar when Athena was betrayed. Because I still believe in what Athena was supposed to be. And because if I'm right, this valley, these people, they're already targets." He left. She sat staring at the drive, untouched coffee cooling beside her. An hour passed before she moved. She walked to her grandfather clock, pressed a hidden latch. Floorboard slid back, revealing a metal case. Her thumbprint unlocked it. Inside lay her old life. Dog tags etched with Cynthia Hayes, a challenge coin from Delta, a knife engraved with a single word, Phoenix, her call sign. Beneath them, a photo of 8 women in combat gear before a Blackhawk. Athena, 7 dead, 1 survivor. She held the knife, felt its weight, the memory of who she had been. Then she slid the drive into her secure laptop. By dawn, she knew everything had changed. Greystone wasn't gone, it had never been gone, and Marcus Drake was coming. Why did she still keep the knife after all these years? Why hadn't she thrown it into the river, buried it under the wheat fields, or left it behind when she tried to build this new life? Maybe because she knew the past wasn't done with her. Maybe because part of her knew it would come looking. And now it had. 3 days after Harrington's visit, Eagle Valley changed. A convoy of black SUVs slipped into town, unmarked, windows tinted, their engines quiet but confident. They checked into the Ponderosa Inn's second-best hotel in town without fanfare, without handshakes or smiles. Not soldiers, not bureaucrats, contractors. Greystone. They didn't try to blend in, not really. Tactical clothes disguised as hiking gear. Groups of 2 and 3 scanning corners like hunters. Reconnaissance masked as strolls down Main Street. They spoke little. Their presence was loud enough without words. Sheriff Callahan saw them first. He noticed everything. Property records requested at the clerk's office. Boundaries studied, deeds photocopied, questions asked, including hers. That afternoon he found Kate in her field, bent over an irrigation pump, dirt on her hands like any other farmer. His SUV crunched to a stop on the gravel road. "Afternoon, Ms. Morgan," he called. She looked up calm, though she'd clocked his approach a half-mile away. "Sheriff, got a minute?" She wiped her hands on her jeans. "What brings you out this way?" He leaned against his truck, hat in hand, voice steady but heavy. "We've got visitors, private security, asking about land. They seem particularly interested in yours." His eyes searched hers. "Company called Greystone. Name mean anything?" For a fraction of a second she considered lying. Then she saw the weight in his eyes, the grief that lived there, the kind that only comes from loss, and she knew he already suspected the truth, maybe not details, but enough. "Let's talk inside," she said quietly. Over coffee, Callahan listened as she gave him pieces of the truth. Not everything, not Athena, not Kandahar, but enough about Greystone, enough about Drake, enough for him to know this wasn't about land or training centers. His jaw tightened. "Bad news," he said flatly. "Last time I saw Greystone, I was in Baghdad. 7. They were supposed to be protecting VIPs. One of their teams opened fire in a market. 16 civilians dead. Claimed insurgents fired first. None of the locals heard a thing before Greystone started shooting. Rumors said they had a black site outside the green zone, too. Never proven, but I believed it." Kate's stomach tightened. "Did you ever meet Drake?" Something flickered across his weathered face. "Once. Arrogant bastard. The kind of man who wears the uniform not to serve but for the license to kill. He didn't belong in the teams. He belonged in a cage." She nodded slowly. "He and I crossed paths too. It didn't end well." The sheriff didn't ask how. He didn't need to. His voice dropped lower, rough with something deeper than duty. "My son Jason, Army Ranger, served Iraq 8. His task force worked alongside Greystone. He sent me letters, said something was wrong, weapons disappearing, unauthorized interrogations. A month later he was dead. Helicopter crash, training accident they called it. Official report cleared Greystone, but I've been a Marine too long. I know when a story doesn't fit." My boy was silenced. Kate felt it like a blade between the ribs. She knew the look in Callahan's eyes, the hollow grief, the buried rage. She'd seen it in mirrors. "If Greystone is here," she said carefully, "it's not for training support, it's something bigger. And whatever it is, it's not sanctioned." "You planning on taking them on yourself?" he asked. "I'm planning on staying alive," she said, "and keeping this valley safe if I can." He nodded slowly, respect mixing with sorrow. Then you've got my eyes and ears." That night Kate drove into town, shadowing her path in circles, doubling back, making sure she wasn't followed. At the general store she bought feed, nails, oil, ordinary farmer's supplies. Across the street, 4 Greystone men lounged by the diner, pretending to relax, watching everything. One of them had a scar running along his jaw. She knew that scar. Michael Rhee, former ranger, Drake's right hand. If Rhee was here, Drake was close. Later in the dark of her farmhouse, Kate reached for her satellite phone. Secure, untraceable. She hadn't touched it in years, but the time for silence had ended. After 3 rings, a woman's voice answered. "Library reference desk." Kate's words came steady, rehearsed. "I need information on the 1943 agricultural report for Montana." A pause, then the voice shifted, breaking professional cadence. "Cynthia." Kate closed her eyes. "Hello, Rachel." Rachel Stevens, her teammate from Athena, alive, at the agency now, the only one she dared trust. "They found me," Kate said quietly. "Greystone, Drake, they're moving on Eagle Valley, and there's something about Athena, something big." "You're sure?" "Too sure." Silence. "Then, what do you need?" "Everything, personnel, equipment, anything tied to Athena or Eagle Valley." And Rachel, Kate's voice hardened. "This stays between us. If anyone else hears, this call never happened." "You're asking me to risk my career." "I'm asking you to prevent another Kandahar," Kate said. Her throat tightened on the word. "Kandahar, 7 dead, betrayal in the dust. I can't let it happen again." The line went quiet, then Rachel exhaled. "I'll dig, but Cynthia, watch your 6, not everyone who they say they are." Kate hung up, staring into the Montana night. Eagle Valley twinkled below her like stars on Earth. Ordinary lives, ordinary people. No idea of the shadow closing in around them. She had lived as Catherine Morgan for 5 years, quiet, building something new. But that life had been cover, and cover was compromised. The past had found her. Fort Bragg, 2004. The memory rose unbidden. 20 candidates stood in formation. 19 men. 1 woman, Captain Cynthia Hayes, at 34, older than most. Auburn hair pulled tight, uniform soaked in sweat. She stood taller than her frame allowed. Colonel Harrington paced before them. His voice carried across the parade ground. "You've been selected because you are the best. Rangers, Green Berets, Air Force Special Tactics, intelligence operatives. You've all volunteered for a program that doesn't exist, and if you fail, it never will." He handed out thick folders, classified. Inside, the operational concept, Project Athena, female operators for environments where men can't go, where women can pass, infiltrate, survive. Murmurs rippled through the men. Harrington's gaze sharpened. "Captain Hayes is our primary candidate. The rest of you will help build her training protocols. Adapt or leave." A man stepped forward, broad-shouldered, sharp-eyed. A name tag on his chest, Drake, Commander Marcus Drake. "With respect, sir," he said, "special operations standards exist for a reason. You can't bend physics, you can't bend war." "The standards will not be lowered," Harrington snapped. "They will be adapted. Hayes has passed criteria equivalent to phase 1 of your training." "Equivalent isn't identical," Drake pushed. "In some aspects it's harder," Harrington shot back. "She speaks 4 languages. She's blended in where you would stand out. She's done combat tour with intelligence units. She has bled for this flag. Your expertise is valuable, Commander. Your prejudice is not. Are we clear?" "Crystal," Drake said, his eyes burned. The training that followed nearly broke her. SEAL endurance, Green Beret immersion, Delta CQB, intelligence infiltration. Every discipline pressed into her bones until her body screamed. The men stopped doubting. One by one they respected her, all but Drake. He hunted her weakness, pushed her harder, waited for her to fall. On the 43rd day, a marksmanship competition. Wind hard, targets distant. Drake went first, tight grouping at 800 meters. His smirk said everything. Let's see you beat that. She adjusted her rifle, calm as stone, controlled breath. Physics, not luck. 5 rounds, tighter grouping than his. At 1,000 meters, same result. At 1,200, the weapon's limit, she still hit. Drake missed. There's no luck in physics, Commander, she said softly. That night she stayed late studying mission scenarios. The compound was dark, quiet. She walked between buildings when shadows closed in. 6 men, masks, hands grabbing, hood over her head. Dragged to the flagpole. The hood came off. Drake stood before her. Special operations isn't for women, no matter what games the Pentagon plays. Ropes bit into her skin, manila fibers, maritime knots, breath tightening. Still think you belong here, Drake sneered. She said nothing, just studied the knots, the tension, the give. Techniques from a Spetsnaz defector whispered in her memory, ways to break what wasn't meant to break. They finished tying her, stepped back proud. Drake leaned in close. By morning, you'll hang here for the whole formation. Maybe then Harrington will understand. Commander, she said quietly. He turned. You should have used better rope. Her body tensed, muscles flexing and releasing in trained rhythm. The fibers stretched, popped, snapped. Freedom, violence, precision. The first man collapsed with a crushed throat. The second with a shattered knee. She didn't kill, not yet, but she broke them, all but Drake. Blood on his face, rage in his eyes. This isn't over, he spat. Yes, she answered, calm as ever, it is. But it hadn't been, not for him, not for her. And now, years later, the rope had found her again. Why did the sunrise feel different that morning, as if the sky itself was bracing for war? Amber light stretched across Eagle Valley, golden wheat glowing like fire in the fields. Kate, Cynthia, stood at the edge of her land, scanning irrigation lines, her breath slow, her posture casual. To any neighbor she was a farmer fussing over broken equipment, but her pulse measured the rhythm of a coming storm. Engines rumbled in the distance. 3 SUVs, black, reinforced, rolled slowly toward her gate. Their movements weren't casual. They were deliberate, calculated. Greystone. Kate straightened, brushed soil from her hands. She didn't reach for the weapon she had hidden under the pump casing. Not yet. Not while the game was still in the shadows. The convoy stopped. Doors opened. 4 men stepped out, their clothes light but heavy underneath with armor and concealed sidearms. They spread, scanning, covering angles. Efficient. Disciplined. Then the last door opened. A figure stepped out, shoulders squared, movements confident. Even at a distance she recognized him, Marcus Drake. He looked older, temples grayed, but his eyes, cold, predatory, hadn't changed. Not since Fort Bragg, not since the ropes. He smiled as if they were old friends. "Can I help you, gentlemen?" she called, voice steady. He stepped forward, lifting his sunglasses. "Morgan, Catherine Morgan, right?" "That's right," she answered, stopping 30 meters short. Far enough to move, close enough to talk. "Marcus Drake, Greystone Strategic Services." His smile didn't touch his eyes. "We're conducting security assessments for the new Department of Defense facility. May we have a word?" Her heart tightened at the way he said it. No recognition in his tone, no flicker of memory. Either he truly didn't know who she was, or he was testing. "I wasn't aware the Pentagon had outsourced security," she replied, cool but neutral. "The world's changed, Ms. Morgan. Public-private partnerships are the new normal. You've got quite a spread here. Prime location, elevation, water, very useful." She crossed her arms. "Are you here to make an offer?" His smile widened. "Smart woman. The Department of Defense is prepared to be generous, above market value, very generous." "I'm not selling." The air shifted. His posture changed, coiling like a snake. "Perhaps you should consider the broader implications." "Implications?" "National security." His voice was smooth, but beneath it steel. Sometimes private concerns must yield to the greater good. Last I checked, she said calm, this was still America. Private property still means something. One of his men leaned close, scar cutting across his jaw. Michael Rhee. He whispered in Drake's ear. Drake's eyes sharpened as he studied her. Well, Drake said softly, there are legal mechanisms, eminent domain, lengthy battles, frozen assets, not a pleasant path. It was a threat in polite clothes. She gave a small, dismissive smile. I'm comfortable with my decision. She gestured toward the gate. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have work to do. He held her gaze, searching, then slipped a card through the fence. In case you reconsider. She took it without touching him. His eyes lingered as though searching for recognition. Then he leaned in slightly. Some people don't know when to cooperate. Rarely ends well. Is that a threat, Mr. Drake? Just an observation. His smile sharpened. We'll be in touch. The SUVs pulled away, dust trailing behind them. She waited until they disappeared before looking at the card. Corporate details on one side, blank on the other. She slipped it into her pocket. 20 minutes later, alone, she scanned it with a handheld device. Her suspicions confirmed. Embedded RFID tracker, amateur tradecraft, a test. He wanted to see if she'd find it. She sealed it in a signal-blocking pouch. Let him think his ploy worked, for now. That night the irrigation system failed. Too sudden, too precise. Sabotage disguised as malfunction. Kate sat on her porch in darkness, night vision monocular raised, scanning fields. Movement, two figures advancing through wheat from the west. Submachine guns, suppressors, proper spacing, low silhouettes, not assassins, not yet. Testing again. She slid into shadows, suppressor fitted to her SIG, body moving silent through her farmhouse. The back door clicked, lock bypassed, they entered. One cleared left, one cleared right. She's supposed to be alone, one whispered. Drake wants her scared, not dead, the other muttered. Confirmation. Intimidation, not termination. Still a line crossed. She waited until they split, approached the first from behind. A hand to his skull, disorienting pressure. Weapon stripped, magazine out, chamber cleared in seconds. The man spun, reaching. She pressed her suppressor to his temple. Don't. The other called softly from the living room. Jackson, you good? All clear here, Jackson managed, steady under her pressure. She whispered, low, controlled. Tell Drake this is his only warning. If he sends anyone else, they won't leave alive. She struck nerve clusters. Jackson collapsed, paralyzed but conscious. The second intruder went down the same way. Both disarmed, propped on her porch, their weapons in pieces beside them. She leaned close to Jackson. It'll wear off in 20 minutes. Take your toys and go. Tell Drake I expected better tradecraft. Israeli tech from 5 years ago. Disappointing. She closed her door, heart steady, though her mind churned. Drake was accelerating, pushing faster, which meant she had to move faster too. Her satellite phone lit the night again. Libraries closed, the voice answered. But the archives remain open, Kate replied, giving the countersign. Secure channel established. What's happening? Drake sent men tonight. Casualties 0, but he's escalating. Rachel, what do you have? A pause, then tension in Rachel's voice. Kate, they're gearing for something big. Equipment purchases under shell companies. Signal jammers, EMP shielding, hardened data storage, gear for a blackout scenario. Operation Blackout, Kate whispered, remembering the name from overheard chatter. Exactly, and there's more. Financial trails tie Greystone to elements inside the intelligence community. High places, be careful who you trust. Her mind snapped to Harrington. Including him. Rachel's pause was deliberate. I can't confirm or deny, just watch your six. The warning sat heavy in her chest. Harrington, the colonel who recruited her, the one she'd once believed in, was he baiting her, using her? She needed answers. The next day she met Sheriff Callahan at the Rusty Nail, closed on Mondays, quiet, perfect for shadows. Inside, Colonel Harrington waited, silver hair catching dim light, hands steady around his coffee. Kate placed a signal jammer on the table. This conversation doesn't leave this room. For 15 minutes she laid it out. Drake, Greystone, the break-in at her farm, Operation Blackout, Harrington's flash drive, the valley under siege. Callahan listened calm, absorbing like a Marine who'd seen too much already. Then he asked, voice flat, "What exactly do you believe Greystone is planning?" "Blackout," Harrington said. "Electronic warfare, large scale, details unclear, but it involves personnel and gear already moving into place." "And you believe this is tied to the facility?" Callahan asked. "It has to be," Kate said. "The timing too precise." The sheriff's eyes darkened. "Like my son." Kate froze. "Your son?" "Jason Callahan, Army Ranger. He reported Greystone irregularities. A month later he was dead." His voice didn't break, but his hands clenched the mug. 12 years I've lived with that. 12 years watching them grow untouchable while my boy faded from memory, except mine." Kate studied him, the pain, the resolve. He wasn't just law, he was father. And fatherhood made men dangerous. "Sheriff," she said quietly, "we need your help, local knowledge, authority, access we don't have, but it'll be dangerous. Drake doesn't play fair." His jaw hardened. "Ms. Morgan, Kate, my son died trying to expose them. If there's a chance to finish what he started, I'm in." Harrington leaned forward. "We'll need more than the three of us. I can request a special team, but official channels." "No," Callahan cut him off. "Too slow, too compromised. What we need is right here in Eagle Valley." Kate frowned. "Locals against Greystone." "Not just locals." Pride touched his voice. "Veterans, special operators, men who came home and built lives here, Green Berets, Rangers, Recon. They're old, yes, but their skills didn't vanish. And this valley, they know it better than anyone." Kate considered it, the risk, the strength, and the fact Drake would never expect it. "Let's meet them," she said. Why did the old barn at the edge of town feel more like a bunker than a storage shed? Maybe because the men inside had once carried rifles through jungles and deserts, not hay bales. Maybe because the weight of war never really left them. Kate followed Sheriff Callahan into the dim space, the smell of oil and wood heavy in the air. 8 men sat in a rough circle of folding chairs. Jeans, work boots, flannel shirts, but the way they carried themselves told another story. Backs straight, eyes sharp, movements deliberate. Soldiers. Callahan cleared his throat. "Gentlemen, this is Catherine Morgan. Some of you know her as a farmer, that's not wrong, but it's not the whole truth either." Murmurs rippled. A tall man with a beard like iron spoke first. "You said this was about security contractors, Sheriff. What's she got to do with it?" Kate met his eyes without flinching. "Because they're not just contractors, they're Greystone, and they've already tried to push me off my land." The room tightened. Everyone knew the name. "Greystone?" another said, voice edged. "Hell, I saw those bastards in Fallujah. They opened fire on rooftops without checking. Nearly cost us the whole block." A third leaned forward, fists clenched. "They ran black sites outside Mosul. I know because I pulled prisoners out of one, half dead." Kate let the silence settle before she spoke again. "They're here for more than land. They're here for Operation Blackout, a large-scale electronic warfare initiative. If they succeed, this valley won't be farmland anymore. It'll be a forward base, and anyone in the way will disappear." The bearded man squinted. "And you, who are you really?" She took a breath. 15 years of silence cracked open. "Captain Cynthia Hayes, Project Athena, Special Operations, Classified. We were trained for missions where men couldn't go. 7 women, 1 survived." Eyes widened. Whispers cut across the room. One man nodded slowly, as if piecing old rumors together. Callahan's voice carried. She's not asking for sympathy, she's asking for help, and I'm backing her. The bearded man leaned back, arms crossed. Name, Sam Walker. Green Beret, 3 to 12. This valley's my home. If what you're saying is true, it's already under threat. So tell us what you need. Kate scanned the room, meeting each pair of eyes. Skills, eyes, ears. I can handle infiltration and counterintel, but I can't be everywhere. Greystone's here in numbers. If we move like civilians, they'll steamroll us. But if we move like soldiers, we can slow them, maybe stop them. The oldest of the group, gray hair, navy tattoo faded on his forearm, raised a hand. Stopping, one thing. But what's the end game? We kick their tail, they bring reinforcements. We stop Blackout here, they start it somewhere else. What then? Her throat tightened. Then we make it loud, document everything, evidence, names, files, send it so wide and fast they can't bury it. If they want shadows, we drag them into daylight. Silence. Then Sam Walker gave a single nod. All right, you've got us, but you'll need more than rifles and memories. You'll need a plan. For the next 2 hours, the barn became a war room. Maps spread across crates. Intel scribbled in quick strokes. Roads, choke points, comms relays. Each man contributed fragments, old ranger tricks, marine recon knowledge, local topography. Kate watched, absorbing. For years she'd been alone. Now, for the first time since Athena, she was. And yet the weight pressed harder. Because if she failed, these men, these fathers, farmers, husbands would pay. Later, as they dispersed, Sam caught her by the arm. One question. You said Greystone tried to push you off your land. Who led them? She hesitated. Marcus Drake. Sam's face hardened. I served under him, Iraq. He got men killed for photo ops, and he always landed on his feet. If he's in charge, his grip tightened briefly. We'll need more than grit. We'll need luck. When she finally drove home, the valley looked unchanged. Quiet fields, distant mountains, but her gut told her different. Drake was moving pieces already. Inside her barn's hidden basement, she reviewed Harrington's flash drive. Documents scrolled past. Schematics. Names, budgets. The deeper she dug, the worse it became. Blackout wasn't just electronic warfare, it was control. EMP strikes to disable communications. Signal jammers to blind satellites. A valley-wide blackout that would leave the missile silos at Malmstrom isolated, vulnerable. Then, insertion. Control. Whoever held the codes could rewrite the balance of power. She leaned back, bile in her throat. This wasn't about land. This was about nuclear deterrence, about who held the keys to America's arsenal. Her phone buzzed. Rachel. Tell me you've got good news, Kate answered. Not exactly. I traced Greystone contracts. They're pulling talent from everywhere. Ex-SEALs, Rangers, foreign mercs. Numbers suggest a company-sized element, 100 plus. Kate's stomach sank. Against 10 farmers and me. Farmers who used to be killers, Rachel reminded her. But listen, there's chatter about infiltration. They may already have assets inside the Pentagon. Someone's feeding them clearance-level intel. Which means Harrington could be dirty. Silence, then Rachel said carefully, I didn't say that. You didn't have to. That night she couldn't sleep. She walked her fields in silence, stars burning overhead. Every fence post felt like a countdown. Every rustle of wheat a whisper of war. At dawn, a knock at her door. Callahan stood outside, pale, jaw set. Kate, one of the men we met last night, Tom Ray's. Marine recon, he's gone. Her chest tightened. Gone. Didn't show up for chores. His truck's still in the driveway. Wife says he went out before sunrise. No note. Kidnapped or worse. She grabbed her pack, sidearm holstered, eyes hard. We find him. They tracked through timberline, following sign only veterans could read. Broken grass. Boot prints. Cigarette ash. A trail leading west toward the county road. Then they saw it. Blood on a fence post. A scrap of fabric, drag marks. Kate crouched, touching the stain with her glove, still tacky, fresh. Her throat went dry. Not again. Not another comrade stolen in the dark. She looked at Callahan. They've made their first move. His face hardened, voice a whisper edged with grief. Then let's make sure it's their last. Why did the valley feel like a theater now, with every sound a cue and every shadow a possible actor? Kate moved through that theater like someone who had memorized the script but refused to act it out. Her hands were steady, but inside a storm raged guilt, anger, a prickling, patient dread. Tom Ray's trail was cold in places and fresh in others, a patchwork of deliberate misdirection and sloppy confidence. Greystone wanted him found missing. They wanted a message. They hadn't counted on a woman who remembered how to read a battlefield the way farmers read weather. They found Tom where the trail bit into the Badlands, a shallow ravine where scrub met broken shale. His truck lay on its side 40 meters from the road, doors ajar, the driver's side window smashed. The seatbelt snapped like a rent promise. Inside, his watch lay stopped. They moved around the scene in practiced silence, taking photographs on phones with airplane mode engaged, cataloging with the clinical intimacy of people who had seen too much. Sam Walker crouched at Tom's boot prints, the lines on his weathered face deepening. They left him a mark, he said, not a mistake. Kate leaned down and turned a scrap of cloth with gloved fingers, a fragment of a black uniform strap graced on weave. Her throat tightened on its name. She breathed out and felt the valley hold its breath with her. They didn't want a firefight here, Callahan muttered. They wanted to scare us, take one and make the rest think about who they were dealing with. Scare us? Sam's laugh was a dry thing. They don't know us. They followed the drag marks into a dead patch of scrub, where broken twigs crunched under their boots like brittle bones. There, half buried, they found Tom's dog tag. One side dented, the letters smeared with blood. The sight punched the air from Kate's lungs and brought back the smell of dust and diesel from Kandahar. The old ghosts liked to hang around when new ghosts appeared. She felt each memory scrape across her like gravel. The hospital lights, the echo of Harrington's voice, the rope, the way Drake's grin had felt like a verdict. The present rode through past and future in the same boat. She should have been able to keep people safe. She had sworn it once in places where oaths were simple and consequences immediate. Now the stakes were different and the oath felt brittle. "Split?" she asked, voice small but sharp. Sam nodded. 2 teams. One pushes the ridge toward County Road 14. The other circles back toward Highway 2. We flush them, see who answers. They moved like ghosts. Old men and one woman with a farmer's gait, slipping through undergrowth that might as well have been jungle for the way their breaths hitched. Kate maintained a low pace, her head on a swivel. Every snap of a twig was rehearsed, catalogued. Her mind mapped possibilities like a chess player who had once lost a queen and could not afford another mistake. On the ridge, 2 shapes moved, figures with low profiles, carrying packs that measured intent. Sam crouched and raised a hand. The men froze like cut scenes. Kate watched them through her scope. The nearer figure had a braid of hair swinging beneath a cap, a woman, not much older than Tom, maybe in her early 30s, hands steady on the pack. The other was broader, a silhouette that would have been familiar in 1,000 war zones. Greystone tradecraft, yes. But there was something off, hesitation, a flicker that suggested unease or instruction. People who kill quickly often have a lack of hesitation. These moved as if carrying guilt. Sam whispered, "Ambush." "Test," Kate replied. "They want response. They want to see who we are." They moved anyway. The plan was simple: push hard, make noise, force a response. If Greystone wanted a spectacle, they'd get one, but on terms Kate set. Sam's team detonated a pre-planned distraction far enough away to draw attention, then collapsed to the earth, breath rasping. In the chaos, the 2 figures melted into shadow. The woman's braid flashed once more, and then she was gone. They found a shallow grave 2 kilometers away, crudely dug. Tom was there, alive but unconscious, bound in a way meant to humiliate, duct tape across his face, hands slashed where someone had wanted to make sure he couldn't fire a weapon. Rage and relief hit the group in equal measure. He was breathing, alive. That first victory felt like a splintered tooth of triumph. Tom's eyes fluttered open hours later in Kate's barn, the room smelling of antiseptic and fried coffee. He tried to smile and failed. "You shouldn't have come," he croaked. "You shouldn't have left," Kate answered. Her voice shook with something that wasn't just fatigue. A story's worth of shame and a lifetime of consequences pulsed through her. Tom's jaw worked. They asked about the silo, asked about logistics. They wanted a man who could talk in numbers. I told them nothing. They beat me. Then the woman, she started crying, said she didn't want to be there. I heard that and he stopped, hands shaking. Kate leaned forward. "What did you hear?" she demanded, gentle and hard at once. Tom closed his eyes. They were ratted out from inside, someone with clearance, someone who could move files, someone at the Pentagon. The word landed like a stone. Blackout wasn't just technology. It was a path paved by people who had access to systems. It meant trust betrayed on systems level. It meant that even if they frightened Greystone off the valley, the enemy could flick a switch and reduce Malmstrom's defenses to a paper tiger. Kate felt cold then, not from the wind, but from the realization that the fight had teeth in institutional bodies. The moral calculus shifted. This wasn't about pride or land. It was about the fragile architecture that stood between catastrophe and the ordinary lives of the valley. She watched Tom's chest rise and fall. He'd always been the sort to laugh too quickly, to fix things with a patch and a prayer. That night he spoke in a whisper that felt more like a prayer than anything else. "I saw the woman, tattoo," he said, and the room fell quiet. "A small crescent under her collar. Contractors have them. I knew one with that same mark in '09. She left because she couldn't stomach it. She left a note in her locker at base. Said she couldn't keep being part of things that killed people for profit." Kate thought of the woman on the ridge. The braid, the tremor, a human face in Greystone's machine. It complicated the narrative in a way she hadn't wanted. It didn't excuse them, but it was a lever. People break. People also sometimes help. They had evidence now. A living man who'd been taken, a clue about insiders. They had to act, but with care. Kate convened the small council in the barn, the men circled like wolves and fathers both, faces drawn tight. "We can't go to the press," she said. "Not yet, they'll bury it, spin it. We document, we get proof to people who won't be bought or scared. Rachel's digging. Harrington's flash drive has names. We need a server, an air-gapped export, and safe passage to someone who will publish." Sam rubbed his chin. "We can run a dead drop at the old transmitter station. No cameras, no official logs." He looked at Callahan. "You still got friends at the county facility?" Callahan nodded. "A couple, they'll help, but the moment this leaks we're outlaws." Kate swallowed. So be it. The plan unfolded with a painfully human rhythm, technical, patient, brutal in its slowness. They would take physical copies of Harrington's data, make forensic images, and transfer them to a drive that could be smuggled out of the valley. Rachel would be the ghost who sent it past enemies. The risk was the act itself, the human hands that carried truth against men like Drake. Over the next 2 days, they picked through Greystone's local footprint. A warehouse on the outskirts that housed crates marked innocuously as agricultural equipment, though its manifest listed frequency jammers and hardened server racks. A shell company with ties to a land developer in D.C., a fixer who used to be a contractor for a NATO supply chain. Names that threaded like bruises across their intel. At night, Kate lay awake thinking about the woman on the ridge who had cried, about the people in uniforms who had hollowed out their own empathy to justify what they did. She hated them for what they were doing, and she hated herself for seeing the face of a human who might once have had a choice. She stood on the porch one evening and watched the valley burn orange in sunset. Her fingers found the groove of the phoenix knife at her hip, and she felt its weight like a memory. She had killed before, in ways that left nothing but absence and questions. The man she had been taught to be told her that sometimes action spoke where words failed. The woman she had become counted losses and loved people who made her whole. The two selves pulled like weather across her ribs. She found Rachel in a safe room 2 nights later, a cramped motel near the county line with blinds perpetually closed. The woman's face was sharper than the last time they'd spoken, like someone who had been in a storm and decided to keep walking. "You got it?" Kate asked. Rachel slid a thin case across the table. "Harrington's drive was only the start. I found payment trails, shell companies tied to a third-party contractor inside. The names are real, the documents are real, but I couldn't get them all. Someone's watching." Rachel's knuckles trembled. "They tried to scrub some records through a contractor with level 3 clearance." "Do you trust Harrington?" Kate's question cut quick. Rachel looked at her for a long moment. "He's messy. He's got ghosts, but he's not Drake, not in my read. He saved your life once, right?" she said. "Maybe he owes a wrong, or maybe he's playing a hard game. Either way, these files prove something. We can get them out." "Then let's move." Kate's voice was steady, but underneath, the old fear that she could not protect everyone throbbed. The moral line they were crossing felt divisible: expose corruption and risk total blowback, or protect themselves and allow a poison to spread. Her hand tightened on the knife at her hip, memory and oath and fear braided around the handle. They would move at midnight. Sam and 2 others would transport the drives to the transmitter station. Kate would be the decoy, drawing eyes toward an empty barn. Callahan would have deputies ready, and Rachel would upload pieces through secure channels to journalists with reputations for being incorruptible. As they prepared, Tom sat up and stared at the stars above the barn roof. "You ever wonder," he said softly, "why the good stuff seems to need so much luck to survive?" Kate looked at him and didn't have the comfort of a clear answer. She only had the will to act. Sometimes, she thought, dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts. They moved into the night, like people breaking a weightless promise. Why did the night feel like a held breath, as if the whole valley waited to see whether mercy would show up or men would break quietly? Midnight pressed its weight down on the world. Crickets fell silent, as if sensing the unnatural traffic of danger. Kate moved through her fields with the careful patience of someone who had learned to navigate a minefield without looking at the mines. Her shadow slid across wheat like a promise. Her breath was measured. Her fingers knew the path to her gear without thinking, muscle memory folding into the moment like a second skin. They split into 3 teams. Sam's truck carried the drives, 2 hard cases wrapped in lead-lined bags. Tom rode shotgun, pale but determined. Sam's eyes held the steady calm of a man who had driven through worse darkness and come home. Callahan's deputy would trail 50 meters back, an extra set of local eyes. Kate would be the lure: a plain barn, a lit lantern, the smell of a lone woman keeping late hours, a small light for a big shadow. Rachel would be the ghost with the upload key, fingers ready at a motel terminal, heart hammering in a room without windows. They had rehearsed the route until silence was a partner, but rehearsals don't account for luck's crooked teeth. Luck has its own agenda, and Greystone's luck came dressed as a convoy with headlights slicing the dark like knives. Kate felt it before she saw it, the way the animals shifted, the distant thunk of engines, tires crunching gravel in a rhythm that said, not coincidence. 2 black SUVs moved up the county road, slow, precise. Drone hum threaded the air, a small, mechanical wasp sweeping zones like it owned the night. She dropped behind hay bales and watched headlights paint the barn. Men emerged, 3, then 4, moving with the relaxed American arrogance of hired force. Michael Ree led them, his scar a pale road on his jaw. Beside him, a woman with a crescent tattoo walked with the stiffness of someone who had made a bargain and not yet decided whether to regret it. The woman's eyes flicked to the barn and then to the fields. For a moment Kate thought she would step forward, call out, blow the operation. Then the woman hesitated, fingers fidgeting at her collar. Human, Kate thought, a dangerous adjective in a business built on being less than human. Sam's truck eased to a halt on the ridge. Tom's hands trembled when he opened the tailgate to pull the case. Nothing personal about tremors, nerves, and righteousness sharing a body. Kate's radio whispered, "Now." The plan unfurled. Sam and Tom would move the case into the transmitter building 300 meters east. Kate would draw attention, enough to make Greystone commit. Callahan's deputy would take the perimeter, and Rachel would go live the second they confirmed the drives were en route. Sam crouched low and sprinted toward the service road. Tom moved with the deliberate care of a man carrying too much weight. Kate stepped into the lantern light, a silhouette the size of one woman who had a history. She called out in a voice that sounded like normalcy. "Can I help you fellas? My barn's on fire." "No, no, it's fine. Sorry, false alarm." She laughed too loud, a small sound meant to be human. Ree cocked his head. "You alone out here?" he asked. The woman with the crescent closed the distance, eyes narrowed. Kate's palms rested at her sides, showing no weapon, and her calm was a practiced blade. "Just me," she said. "You folks lost?" "We're making sure the area's secure," Ree said. His smile was a hinge that didn't open. "We had reports of unusual activity." "This valley's full of unusual things," she replied. "Not all of them worth shooting." The woman with the crescent did something small, tugged a loose thread at her sleeve, then turned her head like someone remembering a song. Her gaze snagged on Kate's face and lingered. For a breath, the tension in her shoulders softened. Kate almost thought she saw regret. Almost. Behind the barn, Sam signaled, lights two quick flashes. Tom stilled, hand on the case. On the ridge, a drone dipped low and a soft click crackled in Sam's earpiece. Someone had triangulated movement. The case was heavy and humming with the weight of proof. Then the world became noise. Tires spun. Figures ran. The crescent woman bolted first, toward the transmitter station, and for a heartbeat Kate felt every plan lean toward collapse. Sam sprinted, Tom stumbled, and the chase began in earnest. Men at night, moving like predators and prey in a theater of wheat. Gunfire didn't ring, not at first. It was a soundless ballet of motion and breath and near misses. Men grappled with shadows, lunges made of remembered pain. A flare lit the sky like halogen sun, and suddenly every silhouette was defined. Sam cried out a sharp word and Kate saw him go down, grubbed by a boot that wasn't his. He'd taken the hit to give the case a second. Tom pushed on, dragging the lead-lined bag like an anchor. Kate moved through the chaos, moving not to kill but to protect, the old rules realigning into a new one. Keep the truth moving. They reached the transmitter station breathless and filthy. Old towers like sickled teeth rose into the night. The building's door was iron and stubborn, but Sam had that look, a man who'd taught doors to give. They forced the case inside, slapped it into a comms rack, and rooted out a battery-powered offline uploader Rachel had prepared. Her hands on the motel keyboard would be the end of the line. At the motel, Rachel's fingers flew. Her face was a map of concentration and terror. She tapped keys, routing packets through dead drops, bouncing them off ghost servers in jurisdictions that made Greystone's legal team bleed on paper. Evidence spilled into the ether. Financial ledgers, contracts, emails with coded language, names of contractors, shipping manifests for EMP shielding, and the detail that iced Kate's blood. A manifest line tying access credentials to a contractor listed as an analyst at the DoD, the file label read Clearance 3 Admin. On the ridge, the crescent woman caught sight of Rachel's motel light on the edge of a distant screen and faltered, eyes wide. Her hand went to her throat, then to the small tattoo. She hesitated, the hour split between what she'd been told to do and what she'd seen. Somewhere between the barn and motel, Harrington's name swam up like an island. The flash drive he'd given Kate had been the breadcrumb that led them to this path of documents. Harrington had been messy. Messy had been a useful kind for the enemy. But in the raw data Rachel sent, Harrington's name showed in attendance logs, in requests for audits, and a notation. Recommend review, vetting failed. Someone had flagged irregularities and then, after the meeting, struck them from the record. Someone had bought silence, or someone had feared being burned. Rachel hit send. The files dispersed. It was less dramatic than it felt. Packets warbling into safe hands, registered journalists who'd been vetted by shadowy NGOs, watchdogs who'd waited for a bone big enough to chew. For a moment nothing happened, and then everything happened at once. Phones vibrated like a hive. Emails pinged reporters. A journalist in D.C. who had teeth for stories opened their inbox. The public records site lit up. Back at the transmitter, Kate watched the horizon. The sky was bleeding a dull blue. In the distance, headlights receded but then neared again, Greystone recalibrating, reorganizing. They wouldn't give up easily. That was their business model, but the files were out. Truth had wings now. Sam moved, groaning, sitting on a crate. He'd taken a blow, but nothing that would take him out. Tom slumped, laughing terribly into the mouth of exhaustion. Kate found herself laughing too, a brittle thing that tasted like victory and ash. They were alive. The drives were moved. The files were in motion. Then the radio crackled to life with a voice like gravel. Delta Team inbound. Block roads. Don't let them get past you. Callahan's deputy barked commands like a man whose son's ghost sat on his shoulder. They scrambled to positions, hearts still loud. The crescent woman reappeared at the edge of the transmitter clearing, breath ragged. Her eyes met Kate. For the first time, she didn't look like the machine that Greystone wanted her to be. She looked like a person who had been asked to kill and had chosen to answer differently. Her voice trembled across the field, raw and small. "I can't, I won't." Ree cursed and raised his rifle. Time seemed to fracture. Kate's palm was steady on her weapon, but her mind did an arithmetic of choices. Shoot and silence another human, or take the chance that truth could be enough. The woman's hands were empty. Hesitation filled the space like wind. "Come here," Kate said, voice a low command and a promise. "Drop it, walk slowly." The woman obeyed. The rifle lowered. Ree's jaw scraped. The rest of the night slowed into the long minutes of aftermath. Vehicles that would have brought greater force snarled in the county. Local deputies and the barn crew moved like a seam holding a wound together. By dawn, the valley smelled of diesel and hot coffee, not fear. News alerts began to roll across phones in the sheriff's truck, and then small-town chatter became a roar as journalists called the county line. The files were live. They spread like a sickness Greystone could not immediately contain. Contracts, names, evidence of internal clearance misuse. The same documents that could have been buried for years were now seeds in 10,000 hands. But truth is rarely an instant cure. For each journalist who called with curiosity, another voice answered with threats and legal letters. For every armature of light, Greystone's long reach flexed and dialed up. The war was only beginning in a different register. They'd bought time and they'd bought enemies. Kate stood atop the transmitter building as sun clawed over the ridge. Her hands shook, but it wasn't from fear. It was the residue of work done, and of the knowledge that the night had shifted the world in a way that couldn't be undone. She looked at the valley, at the town that had slept while Titans rearranged their bones in secret. She thought of the woman with the crescent, of Rachel's exhausted fingers, of Harrington's ghosts. Sometimes justice is not a tidy thing. Sometimes it is a messy, loud, and dangerous chorus that risks everything for truth. She had chosen to sing. The melody wasn't finished, but for the first time in a long time, she felt the old oath to protect, to act, and it matched the woman in the mirror. As the sun rose higher, the valley exhaled. Dignity didn't need permission. It only needed a voice, however ragged. Why did victory feel so fragile, like a paper lantern in the rain, glowing but one breath away from collapse? By sunrise, Kate knew the battle hadn't ended with the files leaving the valley, it had only shifted. The news cycle buzzed, reporters circling like hawks, hungry for meat. Some outlets dared to publish fragments, whistleblower leaks, financial irregularities, black ops slush funds. Others waited, hesitant, measuring careers against consequences. Greystone wasn't hesitating. By mid-morning, 3 new convoys arrived in Eagle Valley. Not SUVs this time, armored vehicles, military grade but without insignia. The town square filled with the low growl of engines. Contractors stepped out in formation, not hiding, not pretending anymore. They carried rifles openly, helmets gleaming under sun. The message was clear. Intimidation had escalated into occupation. Sheriff Callahan met Kate on the courthouse steps. His jaw was set, eyes burning with something she hadn't seen since Vietnam memorials, grief sharpened into duty. "They've crossed a line," he said. "This valley's not theirs to claim." Kate's eyes scanned the square. Civilians peered from shop windows, children clutched behind skirts, whispers rising like smoke. Fear had come to the valley in broad daylight. If they didn't push back now, Greystone would write the script of silence. But war wasn't just guns. War was perception, and perception could be weaponized. Kate leaned close to Callahan. "We need to hold them accountable here in front of these people. If the valley sees us stand, they won't fold." Callahan's deputies flanked him, 3 men with worn holsters and steady hands. Behind them, Sam and the veterans emerged, faces lined with decades but eyes sharp as knives. Ordinary in clothing, unmistakable in presence. Drake stepped into the square dressed crisp in tactical black, his grin wide. "Sheriff Callahan," he called, voice carrying. "And Miss Morgan, or should I say Captain Hayes, imagine my surprise." The square stiffened. Locals turned to Kate, their quiet farmer suddenly recast as something more. She felt the weight of their eyes. Shame and pride tangled in her chest. "You've overstayed your welcome," Callahan said. His voice carried calm authority, years of trust sewn into every word. Drake smirked. "We're here under federal contract." "Federal contracts don't give you the right to kidnap my people," Callahan shot back, "or to occupy my town." The silence broke in murmurs. Farmers, mechanics, shopkeepers, their fear was cracking. Drake's smirk faltered for just a breath. Kate stepped forward, her voice steady, carrying. "Eagle Valley doesn't belong to you. It doesn't belong to your investors or your shadows. It belongs to the people who live here, the people who bleed here." She let her gaze sweep the crowd. "And we're done bleeding for you." Ree shifted uneasily, Scar catching the light. The crescent-marked woman stood at his side, jaw tight. She didn't meet Drake's eyes. For a heartbeat, the square felt balanced on a knife edge, violence one breath away. Then a voice rose from the crowd. "Sheriff's right." Another joined. Then another. Soon the square hummed with low agreement. Not a roar, not yet, but a seed planted. Drake's grin snapped back, brittle. "Careful," he warned. "Incitement has consequences." Kate held his stare. So does tyranny. Later, back at her farm, the veterans gathered again. Sam winced as he adjusted a bandage, but his voice was iron. "They're not leaving, not unless we make them." "They've got numbers," one man muttered. "Gear we can't match." "Then we don't match them," Kate said. "We outthink them, guerrilla tactics, surveillance. Cut their supply lines, document everything, make every move costly." Sam's eyes gleamed. "You mean war?" "I mean survival," Kate answered. Rachel joined them by video feed, exhaustion in her eyes. "You lit a fuse. The files are everywhere now, mirrored across servers. Greystone can't erase them all, but they can still bury you. They'll paint you as domestic terrorists, radicals, criminals. You need more than survival. You need a narrative." Kate's heart clenched. Narratives, the battlefield she hated most. But she knew Rachel was right. Survival meant nothing if the world thought they were the villains. Sam leaned forward. "So we fight 2 wars, one with weapons, one with words." "Exactly," Kate said. "We bleed if we have to, but we show the world what they're doing here. Every lie they tell, we answer with truth. Every act of force, we answer with dignity." That night, Kate walked her fields again. The wheat whispered like old comrades. Her knife weighed heavy at her hip, her rifle heavier on her shoulder. She thought of Athena, of the women who never made it out, of the oath she'd carried alone for too long. She thought of Callahan's son, silenced by shadows. She thought of the crescent woman, eyes filled with doubt. She whispered to the night, a vow no one heard but the valley. This time, no one disappears in silence. The next morning, Drake's men raided a ranch on the valley's edge. They called it search and seizure. Locals called it what it was, intimidation. But this time, phones recorded, evidence streamed, and for the first time, the world outside Eagle Valley began to see. The lantern glowed in the rain, fragile, flickering, but alive. Why did the storm arrive without thunder? Just a low hum that rattled windows and set dogs barking in their chains. Maybe because it wasn't a storm of weather but of men. The morning Greystone made their move, Eagle Valley woke to silence. No school buses, no tractors on the road, no radio static on the sheriff's band. Signal jammers were live, cutting comms like arteries. Drake had chosen his moment, dawn, when people were still groggy, when courage felt thinner than fear. Kate was already awake. She felt it before it began, the way the air grew heavy, the way birds vanished into trees. She stood on her porch, rifle slung across her chest, eyes scanning the valley floor. Headlights bloomed on the county road, too many to count. Armored vehicles, men in formation. A show of force meant to finish what threats and whispers had started. Sheriff Callahan's truck rattled up her drive, Sam riding shotgun, face pale but eyes burning. "It's happening," Callahan said flatly. "They're taking the valley." Kate nodded once. She felt the weight of it all. Kandahar's ghosts, Athena's oath, Callahan's son, the farmers who had become soldiers again. She looked at Sam, at the old lines on his face. "Then we make our stand." They gathered at the town square. Not just veterans now, families, shopkeepers, young men with hunting rifles, old women with cameras and notebooks, ordinary people, armed not just with weapons but with witness. The square buzzed with fear, but under it something else, the slow, gathering hum of defiance. Drake's convoy rolled in. Black uniforms poured out, rifles slung, helmets gleaming. Ree at his side, jaw scarred, eyes cold, and the crescent-marked woman, her face unreadable. Drake stepped forward, voice booming with practiced authority. "This town is under federal jurisdiction, effective immediately. Your cooperation is mandatory. Resistance will be met with force." Callahan stepped up beside Kate. His badge caught the light, small but immovable. "This is still my jurisdiction, Drake, and these are my people. You want to fight, you'll have to go through me." The square erupted, cheers, shouts, a low thunder of solidarity. Drake's jaw tightened. He hadn't expected defiance in daylight. He'd expected fear. Kate's voice cut through the noise. "We've exposed you. The world knows what you are. You can seize this valley, you can break our bodies, but you can't hide anymore. Every camera here is a weapon. Every story told is a bullet you can't stop." Drake sneered. "You think the world cares? They'll forget you by next week. You'll be a headline, then an obituary." "Maybe," Kate said softly, "but we'll die standing. Can you say the same?" The standoff cracked like glass. One of Drake's men raised his weapon too high, finger twitching. In that breathless second, the crescent-marked woman moved, stepping forward, voice shaking but loud enough. "Stop, this isn't what we signed for." Her rifle dropped to the ground with a metallic clang. Every head turned. Ree's eyes widened in shock. Kate seized the moment. "Look at her," she shouted. "She's one of yours. She knows the truth. How many of you are here for a paycheck, and how many of you will carry this stain for the rest of your lives?" For a heartbeat, hesitation rippled through Greystone's line. Soldiers shifted, grips loosened, eyes flickered with doubt. Not many, but enough. Ree barked a command, dragging them back into formation. "Don't listen. They're traitors. Stay sharp." Then the first shot rang out. No one ever knew who fired it. Some swore it was Ree, others claimed it came from the shadows. But once it cracked, chaos followed. Gunfire erupted. Screams cut the square. Kate dropped low, pulling Callahan behind a concrete barrier. The veterans returned fire, precise, disciplined, targeting tires, engines, not bodies. Every move was calculated to slow, to disable, not to slaughter. Civilians scattered, but some stayed, cameras rolling, capturing the clash not as propaganda but as raw truth. A grandmother with a notebook crouched in a doorway, scribbling names and details. A teenager streamed live from a phone he'd hidden from jammers. The world was watching, whether Greystone wanted it or not. Kate moved like water, rifle steady, every shot a decision. Her pulse hammered, her throat dry. She saw Ree advancing, eyes locked on her, weapon raised. He had hunted her for years, first with rope, then with shadows, now with bullets. This was his final pursuit. But before he fired, the Crescent woman stepped into his line, her voice breaking. "Enough, Michael." For the first time, Ree hesitated, just long enough. Kate's shot cracked the air, striking his rifle, sending it spinning. Ree staggered back, eyes wide with disbelief. Drake roared, his mask of control fracturing. He grabbed the Crescent woman by her collar, spitting rage. "Traitor." Kate's boots hammered the ground as she closed the distance. Years of restraint, of silence, of carrying ghosts, all of it surged into her veins. She struck hard, knife flashing, driving Drake to the ground. His weapon clattered across stone. She pressed the blade to his throat, her breath ragged. "You tied me once," she whispered. "You thought I'd break. You were wrong then, you're wrong now." The square froze. Cameras rolled. Greystone's men stared, weapons lowered, uncertain. Drake lay pinned, his own reflection in her eyes. A man who had spent his life taking, finally powerless in the grip of someone he had underestimated. She didn't kill him, not because he deserved mercy, but because silence would have erased the truth. Dead, he'd be a martyr for shadows. Alive, he'd be proof. She rose, knife still in hand, voice carrying over the square. "He lives, so you can see him for what he is, so the world can see. Remember his face, remember his name." One by one, Greystone's men lowered their rifles. Some dropped them entirely. The Crescent woman knelt, hands raised. Ree stared at the ground, broken not by a bullet, but by the moment he realized the rope had finally snapped back on him. By noon, federal vehicles arrived, not Greystone, but official. The leaks had spread too far. Journalists poured in, cameras rolling, pens scratching. Agents in suits took Drake into custody, though Kate knew the fight wasn't finished. Men like him had roots too deep, allies too powerful. But Eagle Valley had held. That evening, as the sun bled into mountains, Kate stood on her porch. The wheat whispered in the breeze. Sheriff Callahan joined her, his eyes soft for once. "You did it," he said. "No," she whispered. "We did it, and we'll have to keep doing it." He nodded slowly. "My boy would have liked you." Her throat closed. She swallowed hard. "I hope he'd have thought I was worth the fight." Callahan didn't answer. He didn't have to. The silence was enough. Later, alone, Kate placed her knife back into its case. Beside it lay the photo of Athena. 7 women, 1 survivor. She touched the edge of the picture, eyes burning, heart heavy but unbroken. The valley was safe for now. Greystone was wounded for now. Truth had broken into daylight, messy and fragile but alive. She whispered to the empty room, words that felt like both prayer and promise. "Sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts." And Eagle Valley, bruised but unbowed, listened.